we will get started. Before we get into our intros, just a quick summary of what we'll be discussing today. As you know, the pace of change in automation and with AI is really unlike anything that we've seen before. And what worked 6 months ago seems like it's outdated, and what is coming around the corner, or what felt like it was coming around the corner 6 months ago, is now here. So we thought it would be helpful to bring together two different perspectives to help you navigate this moment and navigate 2026. KC is here, and we'll intro the next slide. He really brings that practitioner perspective with customers who are wrestling these challenges every day. And Jan, of course, is our CEO, who's helping to build out the platform and vision here at Celigo to help us solve these issues. And this isn't meant to be a really dense slide deck with a lot of text. So for those of you who do like that, I apologize in advance. This might not be for you. But instead, it's meant to be a conversation and really an open dialogue about 6 challenges that we've seen in the market in 2026. You probably have seen them too, and practical approaches to how you could think about solving them. We know that there's probably going to be questions that come up, so feel free to post those in the chat, and we'll make sure to get to them at the end of the session. But without further ado, I will introduce our guests. So first, Jan, quick intro.
Hello, everyone. Super excited to be here. My name is Jan Arendtsz, CEO and founder of Celigo. And maybe just a little bit about my background. I've been in the integration and automation space for a long time, perhaps most of my professional career starting as a consultant, working for a major SaaS company responsible for their integration strategy, then starting a consulting firm way back, running that for about 8 to 10 years, and then ultimately starting Celigo, the integration platform as a service company.
Awesome. KC?
Yeah, thanks everybody, and great to be here today. But KC Fike, I'm a director of Baker Tilly. We're a consulting firm here in the States, but kind of lead our AI consulting practice, which if I think back to the career, it's really I've been doing data type work, warehousing, integrations, visualization for 20 plus years. And now as the industry moves into AI, this is where we've been focused. So working with organizations, develop their AI strategy, implementation, AI fluency, how do we use this technology, custom development as well. So excited to be here today and looking forward to the discussion.
Great. Thank you for that. So we will jump right into our first challenge that we're seeing in the market. This is, for those of you that have been around, and I know for Jan and KC, not a new challenge, right? This has been around for decades, and it's the challenge of breaking down different data silos within an organization. I would say over the past decade, this challenge has been exacerbated due to every line of business adopting their favorite tools and taking that best of breed approach, which has led to the fact that none of these systems talk to each other naturally. In a lot of cases, central IT doesn't even know that they were adopted. So this leads to disconnected business processes across the board. So first, I'll start with you, KC. How are you seeing teams or organizations approaching this challenge today, and how do you think that'll change over the next few years?
Yeah, Chris, and I really like how we're starting here where, I get this a lot from organizations. We want to do AI, right? It always gets back to the data, what systems are we using? Where is it stored out? What's the cleanliness of it? And the challenge, that we see is a lot of organizations come to us and say, like I said, we want to do this, but they have no idea what their landscape looks like, what problem they're trying to solve, right? So these data silos, it's a challenge not only from an AI perspective, but from an information perspective within organizations. And so it's not only where are those silos located, but how are we getting that data refreshed, right? So we're seeing a lot of, hey, we do all this in Excel, we're doing manual uploads, or, we're calling this API and it's all custom code. That's where the challenges we're starting to see, and just really start with the basics with organizations on what does the landscape look like? how are those systems talking to each other? And that's where I think Celigo steps in nicely, is we can have that integration, a reliable integration in that sense where, again, it solves kind of that data problem, that data silo problem we were talking about, where instead of a Band-Aid, it's now we have an integrated solution. We're aware of the data we have available to us. And again, that's where we kind of start the foundation in developing and implementing AI for an organization, is just, we need to understand what we're dealing with. And if we need to, pull that together, that's where we kind of start. So
yeah, that's super helpful. So put a different way, everyone wants to jump to AI, but sometimes they forget about the foundation, which is connectivity at the end of the day. Jan, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, so in my intro, I talked about my experience in this space. And if I go back maybe 10, 15 years back, with the advent of SaaS and the SaaS sprawl, companies went out there and bought lots of SaaS apps. There was an explosion, there was a sprawl, and then various different apps needed to be connected so that they needed to be a connected enterprise. And if you really think about it, why do companies need to connect various apps together? It's typically to automate a certain business process that spans multiple systems. For example, think of a typical front office and back office. In the front office, you have a CRM. In the back office, maybe you have a billing system, a CPQ, an ERP, so on and so forth. And you need to be able to connect those, because the data is in silos. And so we got started as an integration platform, as an iPaaS, integration platform as a service. And what we did back then, and still do, it's still relevant, is to be able to automate these business processes, connect these apps together, and break some of those data silos. And there are numerous different business processes, customer 360, order to cash, quote to cash, being able to connect with your supply chain, so on and so forth. But I think data, the importance of data has changed radically over the last 10 years. You've heard the statement, data is king. For example, to be able to ingest data into a data warehouse, pretty much every company on the planet these days has a data warehouse. And that's another way of being able to break data silos, right? You're able to take data from different operational systems and be able to ingest it into a data warehouse. And then if you fast forward to today, I think pretty much any topic around AI has the word data implicitly associated with AI. You cannot really do AI. You cannot have models. You cannot have AI-based workflows if you don't have access to data. So data becomes really key if you want to ask questions such as, where's my inventory? Or you have, let's say, a fraud detection process that really requires access to data in real time. That's just foundational when it comes to being able to power any type of AI-based workflow.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think you could even see that at the micro level when you prompt an LLM and the LLM doesn't really have context. The difference in responses versus when the LLM has full context, it has your files, it has your systems, it has everything that it needs to know about the situation. And then you break that out into a business where that context is even larger. That context could span across 50, 100, 200 systems, but the same principle is there, where AI needs access to data to be able to perform to its true potential, and connectivity is integral to that. So the next challenge, and I think this is something interesting with Celigo, because although Jan mentioned that we support a multitude of different use cases across different lines of business, from lead lifecycle management to employee onboarding or offboarding, we started in the back office with mission critical integrations. And scale wasn't an afterthought, it was a necessity to make sure that our customers can run their businesses. So I just wanted to take a few minutes, and Casey, we'll start with you before we go to Jan. Break down a little bit the importance of scalability when it comes to adopting a platform, and maybe what failure looks like in terms of what it could cost the business if you adopt a platform that doesn't scale with the business.
Yeah, great question. And it kind of gets to Jan's point earlier, where it's, if I think about issues we've seen or challenges organizations have encountered where they can't scale, it's not necessarily like a kind of a big bang, it's more of a snowball where, a customer's online trying to order a product, inventory's not accurate, I try to order this, it's out of stock. Things that I think about, because that negatively impacts like our customers' trust, bad press, lost sales, things like that, where it's, those cascade into, lost revenue, lost trust. That's where the impact, like I said, it's a slow roll, but that picks up speed if we can't scale. Like, for example, if we do a strong marketing event, we get a lot of interest to our website, orders start coming in, I want to be able to serve that customer. And if I don't have an integration solution that can pull from my warehouse management system and tell me what products I have in stock, or tell the customer what products are in stock, that's where you run into challenges, and that's where the business impact, again, it'll start small, but it'll grow. That's where the impact is then felt. Maybe it's not felt today, but 3 months, 6 months, a year, or 2 years from now, as that trust or that negative impact is truly felt, that's when the company will start to feel it.
Yeah.
So again, if we think about, go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, keep going.
Well, I was going to say, that's where, when we want our organization to shine, like I said, key marketing events or something pops on, on our website or whatever that might be, we need the platform to shine with us as well and be there for us, to support us, to make sure that that customer is best served.
That's a good point. So basically what I'm hearing is scalability culminates into business impact, right?
Correct.
If you're not able to keep up with your leads and follow up with them, if your system crashes on Black Friday, for instance, that's not just a system failure, that's a loss of revenue coming in the door. Those are real dollars and cents. Jan, do you have any thoughts there on maybe what separates platforms that can handle scale and those that might crack under pressure?
Yeah, so let me start by perhaps breaking down what we mean by scalable, which is a term that's used often, right? It can mean reducing latency. It could mean making certain types of workflows and orchestrations be true real time. It can be, typically it's more in line with throughput. Can you handle a spike, a burst, especially during the holiday season, if you're trying to bring in orders, or all of a sudden you might have been to a trade event and you want to do these massive uploads. Look, we're in 2026. In this day and age, crucial for any type of automation platform is this is just table stakes. We were lucky that when we built our platform back in 2015, we had access to all the modern technology, and we were able to, right from day number one, build what I would call an infinitely scalable platform. And I expect most platforms to be able to have that type of capability, but also give some control to companies to be able to decide how they want to architect things like the number of connections you have to a particular app, concurrency, or how you want to be able to prioritize certain workflows over others, so on and so forth. That becomes really important if you're trying to architect a super scalable system. And by the way, I always say this, typically when customers talk about performance, I always say, look, in the end, if you're moving data around and connecting to different APIs, we add like a nanosecond to every transaction. You're ultimately limited by how long those APIs take to return. How big is that pipe Can it be increased? So on and so forth. But I want to come back to what you guys were talking about in terms of the holiday season and Black Friday, Cyber Monday. We have a lot of customers who sell physical goods. They can be manufacturers doing direct-to-consumer, B2B wholesale, so on and so forth. And we processed tens of millions of records during Black Friday and Cyber Monday. In fact, it extended way beyond that. We've seen that the holiday season starts the week of Thanksgiving and goes all the way up to Christmas. And it's just amazing to see that we were able to do all of this with zero escalations, zero downtime. I personally did all of my shopping online, if I'm being honest. And it was super cool to see orders coming from various different sources, some who happen to be our customers. And as you can imagine, right, you place an order during the holiday season, you want it on time. I don't know about you guys. I'm a kind of a last minute shopper, and I have that strict window. And if we are the plumbing that makes a lot of this happen, and that becomes so important so that our customers can really run their business.
Yeah, and that's amazing on the Black Friday, just to operate at that scale with zero escalations. And like I mentioned before, I think that comes back to where we started, where we, in the back office, supporting mission critical integrations, it wasn't a want to have, it was a need to have, and we had to operate at scale, and we had to operate without failure because our customers' business literally hinges on it. So moving to the next point, I think we talked a little bit about technical constraints and scale and sort of the foundation for AI being iPaaS. I want to talk a little bit about not just the technology or the platform, but how the technology and how the platform enable different users to be successful. So historically, iPaaS tools that grew up in the legacy ESB space have been locked off from the rest of the organization and reserved for central IT. And that creates a backlog when you only have specialized expertise that can own and operate the platform. And at the end of the day, we know that a lot of business technologists who sit at the line of business level are the ones who know processes the best. So I don't think anyone knows the lead lifecycle process better than someone who works in marketing ops. So I want to talk a little bit about how we're using AI in our platform and how other platforms are using AI within their platform to make it easier to build automations and build AI-driven workflows. So Casey, I'll first start with you. What are some trends you're seeing in the market there? And what's worked in terms of AI assistance in different platforms to enable those business technologists to be successful?
Chris, you brought up a good point with that marketing example you led, and I think it even gets back to Jan's point earlier, with just how fast SaaS has come on. Where historically, what I see it's IT owning those systems, but now as we kind of shift to the business becoming more investing in the solution, owning it, and to your point, Chris, around like marketing knowing the process, it's how can we use AI to kind of marry like technical documentation on how we need to build within a platform, but me using a large language model to kind of translate that technical documentation into something that I can digest again through prompting. And then also vice versa is, here's my process, what do I need to do to build a workflow? And then kind of flipping that use case on its head, where now I might not have what else to say coding expertise, but from utilizing a large language model, AI, I can now translate my business requirements into technical requirements. And that, again, marketing user that you mentioned becomes more self-sufficient. We're reducing bottlenecks. We're taking that burden off of IT. And I'll kind of talk about that in a little bit as well. But we're able to move as fast as the business wants us to move, right? So again, if I kind of go back to that IT point, I'm not trying to say like IT is completely out of the picture, but it's, we have development standards that we need to follow, coding examples, things like that we can still ground that large language model with, so that business user, again, we're removing that bottleneck of, hey, we'll get it in the queue and we'll get to it when we get to it, like everything else. But it's, again, I'm able to move faster, and provided we've taken that approach with our AI strategy on, here's how we want to execute software development or workflow development. We can ground that large language model. So again, we still can keep control on the situation, but we're now able to move as fast as the business wants to.
There was an interesting point to what you said when you talked about documentation and distilling technical documentation into something that's more digestible for business users and more actionable in a way where historically that was segmented, right? Only IT could work within technical documentation and could work within a lot of these older legacy tools. So yeah, I know this is something that we've thought about at Celigo quite a bit and invested in pretty heavily. Can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, let me start with your last point. So as you can imagine, various different users within a particular company come in and build workflows. Sometimes these workflows can be fairly complex. And then someone else comes in and wants to be able to understand what was done. What does this workflow do? So again, right, in this day and age, this is table stakes. And we built capabilities maybe a couple of years back to be able to describe these workflows in layman terms so that anyone can understand it. That's just one small example. But let me zoom back for a second. I want to go to the hypothesis we had when we first started Celigo. This was way back in 2015. There was this explosion of SaaS apps. And it became very clear to us that the industry companies needed a next generation automation platform and integration platform that can straddle that line between a super technical IT type user, which, by the way, is our main persona that we sell to, but also be able to serve what I call the person who's close to the business problem, the person who has the requirements, who wants a certain business process automated. We have to let those individuals also be part of the process, whether they are maybe starting to build a flow and turn it over to their technical counterparts, whether they're building more simplistic flows because it's easy to use and intuitive and you don't have to get trained on the product, or especially it's the management of workflows. Someone else might build it, IT might build it, consultants might come in and build it, but you as the business owner, can you manage these workflows on a day-to-day basis? And so on that point, way back in 2018, we invested in AI to make it easier for our users to be able to manage these workflows, manage exceptions. Errors happen in integration, to make it as simple as possible, including some self-healing capabilities. Right, so that's the backdrop to now we get into AI. And of course, if our mantra was, how can we straddle that line between a super technical user and a business technologist? With the advent of AI, of course, we were like a bunch of kids in a big candy store, and we've been working really hard to build a set of agents in the product where, moving forward, coming very soon, and literally in a few weeks, there's a big paradigm shift. You don't have to build, just like these days, for the most part, you don't have to code. You're going to use a tool like Cursor, and you're going to manage that. Cursor is going to be your developer, and you're going to be an architect. Using that same concept to be able to build workflows, to tell the system, be able to chat and say, this is what I want done, and for it to go ahead and build it. And I think KC is the one who mentioned business requirements. I'll just give you a small example. It's possible that there's a document is put together on a set of automations that need to be built. That document can be fed into one of our agents and consumed, and there might be a dialogue back and forth. And ultimately that document, the requirements document, can be the blueprint to go build an entire automation, an entire set of orchestrations using AI, the co-pilots or the agents that we have in the product. So that's coming very soon and something that I'm incredibly excited about.
And I'm sorry to just add to that, Jan, like that's, the blueprint. I mean, that's how we go about building agents, whatever system that we're kind of building in, where we still need to we advise clients, like, let's take small steps with this versus just letting that agent do whatever. Like, there needs to be guardrails, and I know we'll talk about this later, but it's, I really like that approach that, Celigo is rolling out, where we need to give some instruction to these agents. We're not just flipping the switch and letting them go. The control, we still need to keep our hands on the wheel.
Yeah, and going back to Jan's point, the next gen Copilot. Right now, we're referencing documentation and making it easy for you to understand what's going on in a flow. That next generation would be helping to build out the scaffolding of the flow on your behalf with just a prompt. So that's extremely powerful. But I wanted to go back to another point, because building is one piece of the puzzle. The other piece that sometimes takes up more time than anything is management and error handling. And I know you spoke a little bit, Jan, about AI error management and how we were early to the punch and started investing in there heavily. What do you see as sort of the next generation of AI, how we handle errors in the platform using AI?
Right. So as I said before, we invested at a fairly early stage in terms of using AI, way before Gen AI came on the scene, to help our customers categorize various exceptions and give them direction to act on it. And so it's no surprise that it's just a natural extension. Not only do we have agents in the product upcoming fairly soon to build your workflows based on a prompt, but also to be able to do anything and everything to manage flows running in production, to chase down some of the errors that you might encounter and ultimately go fix it. So you can converse with these agents in the product to be able to resolve some of the issues that you might be running into and reduce the burden in terms of managing these workflows. Again, we have a number of these internal agents in the product to help you do everything that the UI can do, but make it easier for you to lower the bar, to lower the technical barriers, so that not so technical resources can come in and also be able to take part.
Yeah, and that's something that I'm very excited for. I mean, you can think of it almost as a personal assistant that helps you resolve errors. And I think that's going to save our users a lot of time on the operational front. But I think the next logical question when we talk about giving autonomy to all these different users throughout an organization and enabling business technologists in some cases to automate processes or parts of processes and working and collaborating with IT is, how is this all governed? Because it could be scary, and it could be a situation where you grow in complexity and create even more technical debt. So how do we make sure that there's the right governance model in place when building these automations? And I think this might apply a little bit more to you, KC, so I'll leave you some time to answer that, and then we'll go to Jan after.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It's how do we bring this into our organization? And what we talk to our clients about is we really want to avoid shadow AI. And shadow AI is, hey, I'm off using a public-facing large language model with my personal account, right? And then I run the risk of data leakage or sensitive data from my organization now being retained by one of these public-facing large language models. So again, it's always kind of the way we think about it. Also from there, if we take it to the next step, it's that fluency piece, which I touched on earlier, where, what tools are we using for AI? Again, we're talking about Celigo quite a bit, but again, what are those use cases? And then helping those, first level workers on, here's how we use the tool, here's how you prompt it, developing an agent, here's kind of what we talked about earlier, like here are the rules, what the agent can and cannot do, right? So again, it's the way we think about it is kind of that first piece on avoiding, getting alignment on the tool, and then how do we use that tool effectively so we don't run the risk of somebody saying like, well, I tried it, it didn't work, so I'm off using a public facing LLM. Other things that I think about also from like a model perspective are, what models are we using? How have we just come to an alignment from a AI perspective within our organization? I think about also policies and procedures, right? Because we're working with a lot of organizations on helping them develop an AI policy. And, as we think through that, part of, your InfoSec policy is going to be used in there, your data policy is going to be used in there, your privacy policy. There's all going to be pieces because really, as we led with, this all gets back to data and how we're using it, right? So again, those are just kind of some initial things that we think about. We could probably talk for the entire webcast around like AI governance, but probably not why everybody's here. But any questions or comments on that?
Yeah, so it's good points all around. I mean, I think I heard some of the bad, like sharing personal information or sharing personal data, creating more shadow IT or shadow AI. Maybe share a little bit more about some of the concepts you've seen that like what is best practice? What does good look like in terms of governance?
Great question. And I think every organization is going to be different, right? Because again, I think about what's our comfort level in using this technology? What type of business are we? Right? We don't want to slow down the business, but again, we want to work at that right pace, the correct pace. So we're going to have a different risk profile. What are we comfortable in using? I don't want to, again, I talked about that shadow AI, and again, I want alignment on a platform, or at least, specific use cases within a platform on here's how we're using. So again, identifying those use cases, because I don't want to lose visibility into what people within my organization are using. So again, just, inventorying that. There's going to be different, what I'll call risk profiles for, Jan brought this up earlier. If we have consultants doing development for us, business, IT, what data are we going to be making available to those individuals, right? So like just basic security on who has access to what data. And then how do we kind of roll this out is also another big one. It's like we take the approach of, piloting use cases rather than a massive big bang approach, just because I think, with AI, this technology is so new. We've been working it for a number of years, but again, a lot of the clients that I work with, it's extremely new on like, how do I have a simple prompt with ChatGPT, for example? It's a new way of thinking of using technology. So again, as we work with our clients, we want to make sure they get the value of their investment, and it's taking small bites of the apple, so to say, rather than, because again, we'll do a pilot, we'll learn a lot, the end user will learn a lot, take those learnings, then apply them to the next use case. So again, just kind of a governed rollout approach.
Yeah, I think that'll take us really well to our next question. But Jan, I'll pause here if you have anything to add on the concept of governance and managing autonomy across teams.
Yeah, I think KC nailed it when it comes to governance. So let me maybe talk a little bit more about control. As I said before, the hypothesis in starting Celigo was really to be a platform that can straddle that line between the business side and IT. And especially today, it's really interesting to see the backlog that IT has. And I'll just give you a quick example. So last year, Celigo decided to be an AI first company. And and this was coming all the way from me, the mandate was we need to be the best possible example of how a company can use AI to automate business processes in today's world. And I was just attending a meeting before this webcast. It was a weekly AI committee meeting that we have. And part of the discussion was, well, we've got this team internally that's managing all Celigo's automations. And part of that team is now entirely focused, or I should say, most of that team is focused on building agents to really take the business forward. And there's not enough bandwidth. And that's ultimately, that team is controlled by IT. So the reason I bring this up is using a platform, a next-gen platform such as Celigo, you can get to a federated model. You can be centralized if you want. You can control everything through a central IT type team. You can be entirely decentralized. I don't recommend that, but certainly we have some companies doing that. But the best of both worlds is a federated model where certain business processes can be controlled by more of a central entity, and others can be empowered at a departmental level to go build some of these automations, especially with AI and everything that needs to be done. Various departments and lines of business need to build their AI workflows, build agents, and they cannot necessarily wait until IT has bandwidth. So this is an evolution. It's an interesting model, and certainly I just want to say that the Celigo platform fully supports it as well.
Yeah, and that just reminded me of something that Drew, our head of sales, or VP of sales for Americas, mentioned during our sales kickoff a few weeks ago, and that's that AI sits at the intersection of business and IT, line of business and IT, and so does Celigo. So it makes perfect sense that with AI, and you mentioned the agents that we're building internally, this federated model and being able to enable a federated approach is even more important for organizations. So we're going to go to a quick poll now, and this should be popping up for everyone. So we'll give you a few seconds to answer, but it's really to gauge the current state of AI within your organization. And we challenge you to be honest. There are no wrong answers. Are you not using AI at all? Are you experimenting in an isolated fashion? Are you actively implementing AI in multiple areas? Or are you seeing measurable ROI? We'd love to hear from you on that as well at the end if you are someone who's seeing measurable ROI. Seeing the results start to trickle in. It's interesting. We're seeing a lot of sort of this middle ground of you're not seeing measurable ROI, but you're also not using AI. You're in this experimentation phase. You're implementing AI in a few areas. You might not be sure exactly where to start. And that kind of leads us to our next question, which is, where do you start? I know our Chief Strategy Officer, Ronan, has mentioned that there's a lot of wand waving and spaghetti throwing, as he calls it, where everyone wants to use AI, but they're not sure exactly where to start, right? It doesn't make logical sense to use AI for everything. So how can we get one project or program successful? How do we know where to use AI and where not to? And I know, Casey, you mentioned before starting with one use case and making it more digestible. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a really good question, a very broad question, but it's, clients are obviously like, hey, where can we use AI? Kind of infinite, like versus like, hey, where should we use AI? And my mind kind of goes to, where's there friction in your day-to-day process, your workflow? Like that's my mind goes to, it's like, hey, if we could automate this, would that save you 2 hours a day? Right. So again, like where we kind of work is, where we think is, starting point is to look where workflows are, people are reviewing or interpreting or handling exceptions. This is where AI can add value. That's where we can gain those efficiencies and just kind of get rid of the mundane. And I can go back to focusing on more strategic initiatives or executing my day-to-day in a more effective manner. Like we're trying to bring and that's where it really is AI is helping organizations, identify significant efficiency gains, better work-life balance, if you will, where it just, my mind kind of goes to just where am I constantly looking at something, constantly errors, reviewing logs, right? Again, that's where my mind kind of goes to that example earlier, where if I have a significant log of issues, how can I use AI to, what are constant themes in here? What do we need to change around this workflow or this automation? Again, so it's kind of, just thinking through where is there friction in my day-to-day? Just because I hear you on that, and we get it internally here at Baker Tilly as well. Like we need to start using AI. Great. There's still that gap on where can I effectively use this, just because, as I was saying earlier, it's a new way of thinking and utilizing the technology, right? So it's, again, other things that I think about are, I want to identify, again, start very small with that use case, learn from that. Because again, that'll kind of get you versed in the technology. And then once you kind of build that fluency, that's when we kind of see those light bulbs go off where, hey, I see how we did it in this process. I'm having the same issues in this process. How would I apply that here? And again, it's just kind of starting very small and learning as you kind of go.
Yeah, those are some good points there. And especially on the point of going towards that project or that program or that part of the business where you're seeing a lot of friction. Not to put you on the spot here, but are there any examples or any use cases where you've targeted that friction point and now you're seeing ROI after implementing? And it's okay if no, because I know that number is pretty small, especially from the poll.
Well, I'll tell you, so again, my use case for AI, it's different than I think probably a lot of the people on this webinar, but look, we're in consulting and it's, I'm working with clients to, solve their business problems, utilizing technology, whatever that technology may be. Big friction in my day-to-day was, okay, taking what the client had told me and then putting that into a statement of work, right? So again, if I'm like everybody else on this call, I get off this, I'm on another call, I forget, right? So what I've done, again, with our client's permission, is I'm recording these call transcripts. And what I've done is we've built our own internal kind of AI tool I've grounded it with historical statements of work. So I'm taking call transcripts, uploading that transcript into our own private tool. So again, it stays behind our firewall. And now I have a statement of work at least 95% of the way there in a matter of 15 minutes rather than a matter of 6 hours, right? Again, that's my use case, just because I kind of did what I laid out, where I knew there was friction. Here's how I'm using AI. It's very good in text. It gets me at 90 something that's 95% of the way there. But now I've saved 6 hours of my day versus having to then go back and think, what did this client tell me at 9 o'clock in the morning versus when I'm finally getting around to writing it at 5 p.m. Again, very unique use case just for my day to day. Again, it'll be different from, I think, people on the call. So I answered your question. I don't know how effectively, Chris, I answered your question just.
Well, you answered it well, and I think you followed your own framework, right? That was the most annoying personal issue that you were dealing with, and then you solved it. Jan, do you have any thoughts here?
So, yeah, lots of thoughts. It really comes down to, I think today, a lot of companies want to do something with AI. There's so much hype, and perhaps they don't know where to start. Perhaps they are trying to take on too much. And I certainly want to speak from some of the experiences we've had personally here internally at Celigo, and we have lots of examples of customers as well, in trying to find the areas that will really make an impact on the business. Don't think necessarily in terms of you need to go the entire distance and go with, for example, a fully autonomous agent, when a fair bit of that work, if not all of that work, can be done through a regular orchestrated workflow that is fully deterministic and predictable. And there are massive benefits to that, because in the end, you get predictable results. I think what we've seen, and perhaps this is the key takeaway that I want to impart here, is finding that middle ground, finding areas where you can use AI to augment existing workflows. And if I may, I'm going to give you a quick example. This is one of my pet projects. So again, last year, we decided, we had lots of these conversations internally and looked at where can we use AI in the most effective manner. And one area was to use AI to prospect. And so we decided to go build a set of prospecting agents. And it is just magical in terms of what it can do. And I really quickly want to contrast some of the options that we had. The ideal solution would have been to say, have this evergreen agent who's running all the time, that is looking at customers, the target customers that we want to acquire, and is prospecting them and generating meetings, right? And it's running without any human in the loop. Doesn't that sound wonderful? But we don't trust it to do that. That's where we want to get to at a certain point. But instead, we have a series of agents, modular agents, where after performing some work, such as finding lookalike accounts in a certain industry, getting some of the contact information, writing personalized emails, booking the meetings, there's a human in the loop after every agent executes a certain piece of work, so that we have full control. And that, I think, is a great example of being practical and really moving the needle, instead of trying to shoot for the stars and say, build me an agent that's just going to do everything auto-magically. There's a time and a place for that. Certain business processes can be done. So today and others, the LLMs are not ready, right? So it's being able to recognize and having that practical, pragmatic viewpoint, I think, is important.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think when we first entered the AI hype cycle, everyone was pretty far to the right, or at least they thought that fully autonomous was the option, that it was feasible, that LLMs were up to the test. And like you mentioned, we found that a lot more practically, a lot of these use cases are right in the middle. And another example I know we've done internally is we had an accounts receivable issue where there were, I believe it was 40% of our inquiries were the same three problems, right? It was billing, invoice information, et cetera. And it's a little daunting to have an agent crafting and sending emails to customers about billing with no oversight. So instead, the way that we met in the middle there was we have AI drafting the email, and then there's a human who reads over and validates that that email is correct, there's no typos, that it's referencing the right things, and then they hit send. So we're able to see value, but we're also able to put some guardrails in place so nothing goes off the rails per se.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Those are great points, right? And I think, Jan, you said something that resonated with augmentation, right? It's like AI is not a replacement. And I think the human in the loop, right? Again, my mind, as we're developing agents, my mind always kind of goes to, this is a new hire. This is a first year staff. I'm still going to supervise their work. I'm still going to check it. But Chris, to your example of like writing the email to, the customer, I'm still going to have the human in the loop. It's just that mundane I was talking about. And again, not saying customers are mundane, but if I can get it 95% of the way there and tweak some things, I've saved myself however many minutes of work a day, and then let's multiply that for all the emails you're sending. That's where you're seeing the ROI, right? And again, human in the loop, augmentation. Again, I really like that approach you laid out there, both of you.
Definitely. And we talked about operationalizing AI through the Celigo platform, and kind of identifying where you should start. But there's this general debate that happens whenever you're adopting a new technology. We saw the same thing with integration, right? Do you build or do you buy? Do you buy something off the shelf that you can stand up quickly but might lack the customization that you need? Or do you build something from the ground up, custom code, you have greater control, you can configure it to your liking, but then there are a lot of complications. It becomes harder to maintain down the line, for instance. And now we're seeing the same question being posed with agentic capabilities and agents. So Jan, how are you thinking about this build versus buy equation for agents?
Yeah, so for the way I would think about this is, first off, there's no right answer. Everything is new, everything is changing. And I want companies to think in terms of what are they trying to solve. If there is a quick, ready-made solution available through, let's say, an ISV, a large vendor, maybe it's Salesforce, maybe it's Workday, certainly go ahead and try it. And I'll, again, contrast this with what we're doing here internally. We, as I said before, we have a mandate to be an AI-first company, to be the best possible example, a lighthouse, if you will, in terms of how we use AI and agents to run our business. But in certain cases, we go buy off-the-shelf solutions as well, because, Chris, as you mentioned, it might be faster to solve, faster to market. But then after a while, you may run into limitations, such as it is, of course, built entirely around that particular software app. It doesn't necessarily connect to other apps because clearly the vendor is biased in terms of trying to make their product sticky. I think this is likely the biggest impediment that most companies will face in using ISV-built agents, because fairly soon you need to customize it. You need to connect with various other data sources. We talked about data before. And that's where you get into a conversation around whether you want to be able to custom build it. And look, there are lots of solutions out there. You can go write code to build this. You can use an automation platform such as Celigo. You can use multiple solutions. I'll give you one other quick example. You can use Celigo to use our MCP capabilities to expose certain services, certain workflows as tools, and you can then invoke our MCP server as a tool in your favorite agent building software or platform, right? All of this is possible. I don't think there's one pattern that really is surfacing at the top. Everything's changing. Be pragmatic is what I would say. Use the best possible tool based on the circumstances that you have in front of you. But just know that if you consider a solution such as Celigo, the one, I think, massive advantage that we have is we are a platform that can do everything from building fully predictable, deterministic workflows to also building fully autonomous workflows, 100% autonomous, to everything in the middle. And right now, based on the experiences we've had with our customers and internally, we see a lot of the action happening in the middle, not at the edges, right? Existing workflows are augmented by AI. Or in certain cases, you start with a fully autonomous type workflow, like the one that I mentioned in terms of a prospecting set of agents, and then you scale it back to use the best parts of AI along with predictable workflows as well. So that's the power that Celigo brings. And we're releasing our new agent builder here in the month of March. So that's super exciting as well.
Yeah, and I think those are some good points there. I know we're running a little short on time, but one theme here is flexibility. So Jan mentioned MCP. You can build an agent or use an agent framework elsewhere and leverage MCP to connect to your connectivity infrastructure that exists within Celigo. So those are tools, imports, exports, and APIs. And then coming down the pike, you'll have the ability to build an agent completely in Celigo. So that's kind of a combination of both, where you have the speed of a low-code automation platform, and you'll have the flexibility and control to have auditability, connectivity, and orchestrated in whatever way that you want. So a few things to note. One, we do have another AI webinar coming up next month. That's going to talk a little bit more about why integration and connectivity is so key to operationalizing AI. So you can scan the QR code right now to subscribe and to get an invite to that webinar. It's February 18th. And these should be in the docs section as well. And then if you liked what you heard today and you want to get a little more in the weeds in our platform and have a conversation with our AE and our solutions consultants, you should see a button where you can go ahead and request a demo. Well, thanks everyone again for joining. I know we're a little bit over time, but yeah, we appreciate it. Feel free to follow up with us over email if you have any questions. It's just first name dot last name at Celigo for Jan and I. And yeah, we'll see you next time.